learn more of your desires for us. We pray that you open our ears, that our hearts be willing to adapt and change, that we do things that help others to understand the cross and what it meant, and that Jesus went there in shame and left in glory and rose in the hope of everlasting life and gave us this same hope. Please be with us in the study. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right. If we're in lesson, oh, there's Jack. Not hobbling too bad.
No, graduated from a boot with a handle.
Yeah. Better. We're in lesson 7. And it's the second part of the troubled over death portion. And this guy that wrote this was a gospel preacher. He's quite a psychology person. And if you notice, there's something different about this chapter. You need 7.
Yeah, please.
Here, I'll help you.
They're all together, 1, 2, near the bottom.
What was the fourth set?
7, right?
7.
I need one too, please.
A 7?
Yeah.
I think there's that many in
Is
there.
there two or?
There's 3 pages always. Yeah. It'll say troubled over death with 2 in parentheses. It's down near the bottom of
It's
this.
5 pages.
No, there's only 2. Or 3. There's only 3.
No, there's more with this.
Oh, if you're counting both sides, there's 3 papers.
1.
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's,
competitive in me.
No,
2,
you're giving me the oddball. Yeah.
3,
I don't think that one's copy's double-sided.
It's
4,
not.
5.
That's the oddball.
Thank you.
You know, I always do that one proof at the beginning, that it's not on print on both sides. I get 5 pages, and I didn't want that. Or 6 sometimes. Yeah, I forgot those.
I have an extra one.
Everybody got one?
Yeah, that's it.
So we got one everywhere.
Alright, Phil.
What did you notice different about this one that's different from every other one that we studied before?
It's part 2.
We had
It's
it.
5 pages.
It's 3 pages. What did you notice different? Anything? You looked ahead? That's it. That bothered me at first, and then I realized he left that open so we can go dig out scriptures. We're expected to work in this too. And so, you do some digging in, you think, well, that's an interesting topic. I need to get back to my Bible. And as I've told you a long time ago, if you don't have a chain reference Bible or a computer with a program in it that chain references things for you, it's difficult to do a great study. You got to have something that a word links you back to another word, links you over to a passage, and gets you into another passage. You just have to have that to do a great Bible study. You can read the Bible, but you think, didn't I hear that somewhere else? Well, yes, you did. You just need to be able to click on it or research it. So he left this open, and this is more the psychology of death, where the first lesson was more the passages of death. Yet there's some that haven't been used that are very good. And so I'm hoping you found some to add, and I have found some to add. And really, this is not about death. This is about life and death concerning. Sometimes deaths, as we've experienced, are very peaceful and timely. Sometimes they're untimely, of all ages, and violent. How do we react different to those kinds of deaths? To the different kinds?
Yeah.
How so?
Expected, maybe.
And if it's expected, what?
You're not as angry.
Yeah.
You feel the loss, but you're not angry. So when it's unexpected, and it's violent, and it's sudden, then what?
Why?
Yeah.
And who do you ask what?
Well, of course, you ask God, what in the world? Why would you allow this to happen?
Isn't that a famous movie thing? Is
Yeah.
looking up to heaven, why God, why did you do this? Blaming you for it. And I'm thinking, why do they blame me for it now? Well, we do the same thing.
Yeah.
Seems like there'd be more questions. But it's abrupt.
If it's abrupt and unexpected, there are. Yeah. And why didn't they make one step to the right instead of the left?
Mhm.
Why didn't they wait one more minute in their chair before they went out and got hit in the parking lot?
Mhm.
You know, that kind of thing. And you think, we're really not guided, are we, in anything? We're guided in spirituality, but we're not guided in the steps of our life. You get up in the morning, you do what you're gonna do, you have a routine possibly. That's not guided, that's just
Choice.
you. That's choice.
Yeah.
Let's read where somebody really undergoes a harsh situation. I'm gonna start with, and always refer to Job in these kind of things. Job 1, if somebody would read 13 to 22.
Now there was a day when his sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And there came a messenger to Job and said, the oxen were plowing and the donkeys feeding beside them. And the Sabeans fell upon them and took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the fire of God fell from heaven and burned up the sheep and the servants and consumed them. And I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, the Chaldeans formed 3 groups and made a raid on the camels and took them and struck down the servants with the edge of the sword. And I alone have escaped to tell you. While he was yet speaking, there came another and said, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And behold, a great wind came across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house. And it fell upon the young people, and they are dead. And I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job arose, tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell on the ground and worshipped. And he said, naked I come from my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job did not sin or charge God with wrong.
Okay. Abrupt or chronic? Way to go.
Abrupt.
Abrupt. One abrupt thing,
No, 4.
many troubles in our life. Job's reaction.
Is one that not one of us here would be doing.
Lost my sons and daughters, lost all my wealth, lost the buildings and structure, lost it all. He's went from what in that time and day must have been one of the wealthiest men on earth to nobody.
To laying naked on the ground.
Mhm.
Okay. Question 3, the third part of that. In Job's case, we're his friend. What's our responsibility? We're his fellow Christian. And he's not a Christian, but we are here. And something happens in here like that. What's our reaction then?
What should it be, or what?
What should it be?
Yeah.
We know what our first thought is. What did that happen?
Yeah.
What should we do after that?
I think just to be there for the person in their time of need.
All right.
You know, Job's friends are great until they open their mouths, and sometimes we're the same way.
Yes. Now let's go to Job 2, 11 through 13. Look at Ben's answer. Somebody read that.
Now when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil, they came upon him, that had come upon him. They came each from its own place. Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. And they made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. They raised their voices and wept, and they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads toward heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights, and no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great.
Any of you got friends that'll sit 7 days and sit quietly and stare at you around the fire, around the ashes or the fire? I'm just asking as a serious question. You got anybody like that? No. But we should be like that, right? To me, that was the perfect friends at this point, till Ben says, till they open their mouths. But when they're quiet, don't we want friends like that sit close by, sit in the stairs, or any needs, put our arm around you? That's what we want and need, right? Go ahead.
We were talking at the preacher and elders meeting about when someone is telling you something and you need to discern whether they are telling you something to get input or telling you something to let you be aware. I'm a fixer, so if you're saying something and you're telling me something in my head, automatically, I'm, okay, well, what can I do to help? How can I do this? You may not need that. You're just wanting somebody to be there, to hold your hand and to say, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I look at this chapter more about us in reaction to them that lost than it is about the person that lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's what can we do? How can we be effective? How can we ease pain and suffering? Or just being there and being quiet? Is that what we need to do? Maybe we check mark all the above. Now, Paul, I've got a really ache in my foot and I need somebody to rub it. And I'm telling you, I'd like you to rub my foot. Or how do you interpret that?
Yeah. Well, probably with that one, I'd say, well, what are you looking for here? Ben is really good at those types of things.
You deflected. And that's okay too. You know, Ben's better at it than you are. Sorry. I knew he'd come right to you, Ben. Somehow it just did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Other comments on this? He makes a good point. I thought about it a lot in adult life. When I was a kid, I found that when you hear about cremation, it'd be so offensive. As an adult then, and a Christian, you start studying and realize that's not what anything's about. There's people rotted away in the sea 2,000 years ago, and they'll be found and recreated by God. So it doesn't matter where you're at, you're going to be here again at the resurrection. So, this guy made one good comment on the first page. If you have a cremation and there's nothing seen and nothing done and they're immediately buried, there's an emptiness in those left behind because there's no mourning, no contact. It's hard to comfort. And I thought, he's got a good point on that. And I'm not counter that or counter cremation. I'm just saying that's a good point. So should we not still come together, comfort each other, do those things that are necessary? I went to a funeral once. It was maybe the perfect funeral. It was a farmer that died abruptly. The family had a viewing. They left from the viewing. He went straight to cremation. But the whole funeral was already there and done. And we had seen him and said goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost perfect.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do any of you have comments? Or that's just my thoughts and his thoughts, obviously.
I don't think that's limited to cremation, the lack of closure and the lack of empathy.
Like somebody's lost and you never found them.
Yeah. I think it's becoming more and more of a trend where people are having these, we're just going to do a real quick graveside service, no one's invited, it's just a family. And on one hand, I guess I can understand why people do that, but it does, I think, sometimes take away an opportunity to truly celebrate someone's life and also be there to comfort those who are mourning. And, again, I don't think that's limited to someone who's being cremated versus buried.
No, my dad went that route. He didn't want anybody at his funeral. He didn't want anybody to see him in a casket. He didn't want you to ever believe he was old. And so he wanted the family to bury him and be gone.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. And it's like you say, it's kind of a hollow, feeling because you didn't see anything but a couple family members. And
And don't know your father, but for me, that's selfish.
it is.
And I don't mean that, and
No, you're right.
because it's not, that funeral, had this discussion, that funeral is not for that person that has passed away.
For those that are still.
It's for those that are
Yeah.
still here dealing with the loss of that person that has passed away.
Right.
I think with what Ben's saying, COVID has had a lot to do with that. It's hard to realize it's 3 years now.
Yeah.
But I do know a lot of families who have that family viewing from 5 to 6, and then everybody else from 6 to 8. From 6 to 8, so they can try to, gather their thoughts and have their words, whatever.
Yeah. Funerals are pretty living.
Yeah.
And we don't often look at that. We're like, well, I need to honor him in death. No, you don't. He doesn't know anything. And then the Bible tells us he doesn't know anything. So, but that was just, I mean, there's been many people like that, and tell you the truth, I could be like that. It'd make me happy if you guys found out I was in the mountains turkey hunting somewhere and disappeared and never seen again. I'd hope they admire me, I was out where I wanted to be, and I'm gone.
We might be able to make that happen.
I can give you, and I know I'm talking more, I can give you a great example. Don's dad, a couple heart attacks, had the thing that would shock you vest on, wasn't supposed to do it. Well, a day later, he's out on the tractor, and this and this, so he threw it off and threw it in the field, And that was our wish, was, when he goes, let him be out there let him be doing something that is reminiscent of his entire life.
And in the case of Christians, we can be happy for that Christian that has passed on, because he's in a way better place, minus pain, maybe in the best condition, whatever that physical condition is of his life. So we gotta see each other. We gotta comfort each other. Comments before we go to the next question?
But being, for the living, definitely true. I mean, sounds kind of weird to say it this way, but I would trade the calling hours and that time that we had when my dad passed away for anything. Because it was comfort for me, and it was, I learned so many things about my dad that I never knew, even just from people that.
You get stories, somebody might even bring a picture or something that remembers that you didn't know about.
Yeah, things my dad did for people that I had no idea.
Yeah.
Well, I think a good point for us too is, we can't control what people do in regards to funeral arrangements, but we can still be there for them as a church, as brothers and sisters. Maybe someone has that private funeral and we can't be there for that, but we can still reach out to them and still be, those good friends we need to be.
That's one thing I like about the internet. You will see now funeral homes, somebody 5 states away that just couldn't get back. They can leave a nice message on the websites for a funeral home. And that's nice. And a family will read that stuff. And, there's a lot of meaningful stuff down there. So Ben's exactly right. Now, he does give us some warning, the author here. Beware of shrines. What's that mean to us? And what's that even mean? Beware of shrines or creating shrines.
Like when people seal on the bedroom that the person slept in, or refuse to change anything, get rid of tools that they had at a workshop.
He doesn't say that's wrong, but what does he say?
Don't step into the God.
Well, that, and there's something else that pertains actually to us concerning the shrine, not the shrine to the person, but about us. What about us?
Not to worship it, not to.
Oh, yeah, not just that. Yeah, more.
There's more.
You're right, but there's more. What's more? Concerning me creating a shrine to a lost one.
You have to realize the realization that he is gone or they are gone.
Moving on.
Because if you were not, if you're putting it there, it's you involved.
You have to
You're not gonna
live.
get over.
Good point. So you have to live versus stopping at that point in time. And a lot of people stop at the point in time of the creation of shrine. It just happens. I've met many farm wives that have done that when their husband passed. The farm ran down, the kids tried to jump in and get it going again. She didn't want to make a decision. She didn't want anything changed. It happens a lot. So the shrine ended the shrine. The death ended her life too. We can't be that way. We have to go on, and that's what you were saying, Linda. As Christians, we have to still be Christians. Comments?
There's a stat that says at 70, if one of the spouses pass, the average life is a number. And I don't remember what that number is, but it was surprising to me, which made us, whenever Don's dad passed away, we wanted to try to make sure her mom, tried to stay active, try to do things. My dad
That's
passed
on
away.
us to keep her moving.
Correct. My dad passed away early enough that it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't an issue.
He gives us, you kind of go through 7 stages of mourning. And he gives us those stages of grief that first we'll deny it. I can't believe it. Yeah. God, why did you do this? It's just awful. It's hard to move on. Then we go to anger. Who are we angry at?
Sometimes God, sometimes ourselves.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a person who passed away.
Yes.
Yeah.
You go through all those stages, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Whoever was caring for them.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they probably did all they could do, and, some, not always, but probably did all they could do. Guilt, we move on to guilt.
Could have done more, could have been there.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Then we master true feelings, and at that point, to me, that's the middle of the stages of 7. That's the most dangerous point. Why do I say that? When you master your feelings. Why do you hide it?
I think from a funeral side, I'm trying to go through those with all my, and that was the side where, that was the longest, one of the longest sides, because you don't want to sit, you're trying to meet people and introduce people, and all this is his best friend from here, and you just can't sit there bawling, and, so you're suppressing those emotions and swallowing those emotions.
Yes. That's exactly right. And you do have to get out of that stage eventually, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we often move toward the resentment stage. And who are we resenting?
I mean, it could be all those people we were angry at,
Yes.
God, caretakers, person who passed away, ourselves. He mentions in here kind of becoming jealous of other people who maybe have what you don't have.
Exactly. That's more, jealousy.
Yeah.
They've got it going so good. They still got everybody. I lost everybody. Job didn't do that. He just said, I'm born with nothing. I'm going to leave with nothing. It's nobody else's fault. And his friends come in and said, we really are sorry for your loss. It is such as God has done to me. But then he starts going through these things. Is woe is me. I really deserve this. Why does God do this to me? Job went through every stage we're looking at here. It's the perfect example of life and death and life again in my mind.
Yeah.
Then we finally meet a healthy condition. What is that?
Acceptance.
Yes. You're starting to heal and live again, aren't you? At the point you recognize this has happened. I've got to deal with life. I've got to go on as a living. Some people continue to maintain that blame indefinitely, if not the rest of their lives. There are people that heal and actually reach stage 6. And some people it comes pretty quickly. Some people it takes a while. Comments on that?
One thing, there's no time limit on that. And I think sometimes that someone is grieving a lot or they feel like they're supposed to be over with it. And that might be another reason why they're hiding it or masking, because they feel like everybody thinks they should be, but maybe they're not. There's no, some people grieve a long time, some people
Sure.
over it in a couple days or so.
Well, and the ones that get over it quickly, and there's always detractors in life. So somebody gets over it quickly, everybody says, well, that didn't last long, they sure didn't grieve long, I don't think they cared. And then somebody goes on and on and on, we're like commiserating with them, oh, I can't believe they're letting themselves, it's gonna get their health down. I mean, we're really not very good friends at times, because we're either offended because they get, let's say a widow got remarried too quick, or we're offended because she never got remarried. So how's she win?
Yeah.
So how do we be good friends and get past that stage?
I think acknowledging they don't have to grieve like you would grieve. We all have different ways that we grieve, and maybe we don't even know how we would grieve. Maybe we haven't even been through it, and yet we are projecting what we think it should be. But acknowledging all of the different ways people grieve are valid, even if they're not the same as ours.
So as a Christian, we accept and comfort. Is that pretty much it, or? I mean, it's all we can do. Like I told you before, Job went through all 7 stages. Of course, his first reaction being in Job 1, he prayed, and Paul read it. Then in Job 10, he finally is starting to get to it. He laments his misfortune. When you get to Job 14, he tells us, man is born, he's full of trouble. My life is miserable. I should have known it was miserable from the beginning. That's basically what he told us. When you get 2 chapters later, this is where Ben referred to, his friends, his wife, they are miserable comforters. What does his wife tell him?
Curse God and die.
Yeah. Every time, I'm sorry to laugh, but every time I hear that, I think, I can see my wife tell me that. Because, you know, I'm a real pain, and there'd be times that she might think that, and she might not even say it, but I know she's thinking it. But that's me, that's on me. But in this case, there wasn't anything on Job. Job had allowed Satan to do this to Job without actually touching Job and killing him, taking his life. And so she saw that, and she says, you'd just be a whole lot better off if you were dead. And by 16, his friends had admitted, this is miserable. And when you get down to, I wrote down 42, he confesses to God, I've been wrong. You are all powerful. He repents to God, and God restores him. So what's the message there? If we can get to that point of number 7. What's it telling us as Christians, even though this is a non-Christian time?
Not to hold God accountable.
Yes, exactly, not hold God accountable. What else?
I think there's a place for expressing the questions and even some of the doubts you might be having to God, but there can be a point where we cross that line where it does become we're pointing the finger at God.
And that's what he repented of.
Yes.
Because God told him that big, long dissertation, can you hook a whale out in the ocean? Or can you do this? Can you make it rain tomorrow? Can you make the lightning strike? No, I'm just a weak little man. I guess I'm sorry, God. So he repents. Once we repented, and we know this is available to us as Christians, then what?
Move on and live.
Mm-hmm.
Move on and live.
And God will reward us when it's all said and done. What did he reward Job with? Does anybody remember the end of that story?
A bunch of stuff. More kids, more.
Yeah.
I feel for his wife.
Yes.
I feel for her.
So more kids later in life. How long do you live after all this happened?
140 years.
Yes. I knew you'd remember the librarian.
No.
I read it.
Yeah, so I knew you'd remember. Another 140 years, and he was richer than he was before this all happened. We can go through mighty suffering in our life, and we can recover. And it's harder for the world to recover. And I shouldn't say it's easier, but it's more likely for a Christian to recover because we have somebody way higher looking out for us. Comments?
I heard somewhere where these steps, these stages, they may not be just that, divorce, just some other type of loss. Have a person go through all these.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget that. A loss is a loss, and they may be going through the same thing.
Job loss.
For us to be remembered.
Just a simple job loss. Yeah, it can be devastating.
I mean, 20 years ago, if you treated your dog the way that some treat their dog now, it would have been funny. Now, I mean, we realize that that animal was a part of the family, that loss can just be as dramatic, not that correct word, as the loss of a family member, because that animal is a part of the family.
And you'll still do the mourning and
Correct.
through all these things until you recover. Maybe you don't recover till you get that next spot, right? I think what he's really telling us is we all have been given abilities. How do we use the abilities to help and affect and heal? bring messages to others. I think that's the ultimate question here. It really, like I said, it's not about the person that died. It's not even about the mourning. It's about the recovery and what can I do with what I have. And that's kind of the tack I took with it in the end, is we have to take care of ourselves and we have to take care of those around us that we can affect. I want to read parable of the talents, Matthew 25, 14, 30. Somebody that likes to read. They're a little quicker there. There's a message to each and every one of you in that parable. Ben, you got that? I know you can read quick.
Sure, what, how much?
14 to 30.
Okay.
25.
Yep. For it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted to them his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. And then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also who had the 2 talents came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. And his master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours. But his master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown, and gather where I have scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has the 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
All right. So forget the talents and the money and put in abilities, because that's really what it's about. You were given 1 ability. You were given 2 abilities. You were given 5 abilities. Every one of us did. If you had 5, Paul, what do you expect to do with those?
Display them,
And then
work on them, expand them,
and how do you do that?
through use.
And how do I know that you accomplished it in the end?
That's a good question.
It's not hard. Paul has 5 talents. So you see growth.
Yeah, growth.
And the growth, that's it. Yeah. So he has 5, and he probably makes 5. And it's interesting how somebody given many talents compounds rapidly. It's somehow how we have a couple of abilities. And when I'm talking about abilities, I'm talking about Christian abilities. Can I comfort? Can I cook? Can I haul people around? Can I preach? Can I teach? Can I be able to make something out of it? Make something. So we got the one guy, he only got one thing. So he's kind of leaning down on himself and goes and hides in the ground. What often happens with that type of person?
Fades away.
Does he gain Christians? Or
No. But I mean, in truth, in our talk, I understand what he did. You know, I mean, it's almost, and I don't mean the word gamble when I say it, but it's easy to gamble when you got 5 talents.
Yeah.
You know, when you just got 1, you want to make sure that you don't mess up.
Yes.
And, you know, so if a person, we're talking about abilities now, if a person just has 1, and you look at someone that has multiple, you do shrink, you know. If you are a great mathematician and I have to take my shoes off to count to 20, I'm going to be, what's the word? Not leery, but intimidated, thank you, Ray. Intimidated by what I have. So therefore, I'm going to, you know, I'm going to hold on tight to it and not display it or use it or let it grow.
But this master being God is telling me that's not right. Take that one and just be the best at that one you can be.
That's great.
But
That's great. Yeah.
Well, and I think implied in this parable is that they were given the talents for a purpose, and that was to use them.
Yes.
You know, I don't think the master gave these talents just so they could sit around on them. He wanted them to be used, and just like God gives us abilities, he wants us to use them. You know, he really wants us to take that quote unquote risk, and you know, really it's not so much a risk because it's our purpose. It's what he designed us for.
And often the person that hides the talent loses the talent. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say that kind of comes back around to the church too. Because if that person with just 1 talent, and maybe he doesn't feel that his talent is so good and kind of shrinks back, I think us as a community of believers need to encourage that person with the 1. You know, you see that they have that talent or whatever it is, instead of watching them shrink back and walk out the door, maybe encourage them to, you know, use the talent, do something with it.
Well, all abilities are from God, so everyone's important, isn't it?
Right?
Every ability we have came down from him.
We talk in a lot of classes, you know, how God says over and over and over, do not fear. Don't be afraid. Well, that sort of hit his down because he was afraid. So, even the mention that lesson was, when God doesn't give us a spirit of fear, we tap into that, that's the power to use what we have.
Yes.
And that's not a suggestion. I mean,
Expected command.
well, yeah, I mean, if we take, believe and be baptized, that's a command. We can agree with that, right? Do not fear, that's a command. And we fall short of that command at times.
Mm-hmm.
You're exactly right. Any comments on that? I'm gonna try to end with, I'm gonna try to decipher my best reading here. I'm not necessarily reading the end, but I want to go to the end. I'm gonna go through this one because I want to try. First Thessalonians 5, 2, 6, 8. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. So preparation. And then we go to 6. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. And then 8. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and for a helmet, the hope of salvation. So be wary, be awake, and put it toward hope and faith. Now, I would like to end with, I've got 3 here, I got to decide which is the most appropriate, because we're running out of time. Okay, I think this is the best. 3 John 1, 1 through 4. We'll end with that one. It's us for them. 3 John 1, 1 through 4.
The honor to the beloved Gaius, whom I love and true. Beloved, I pray that all may go well with you, and that you may be in good health as it goes well with your soul. For I rejoice greatly when the brothers came and testified to your truth, as indeed you are walking in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth.
So his joy in that person is what?
They're in the truth.
Yeah.
Christians.
And what else does he hope and pray for on their behalf?
It only go well with them as
And then he be,
getting along
and
well.
then he be healthy, right?
Mhm.
So while people are living, let's care for them. When people die, let's care for the living. And so I think that's the overall message here before we move on to the next week's lesson. Ben and Paul are one of you. Pass these up. There you go.